Welcome to Acoustic Afternoons. Why not take a break? Find a comfy chair, pour yourself a coffee, and let the music from today's singer take you away. I'm very excited today to welcome our special guest to Acoustic Afternoons, internationally renowned tenor, which includes the United States, I'm told, Isaiah Bell. Welcome, Isaiah, to Acoustic Afternoons.
Hello, it's nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again as well. So it's not been so long since we've seen each other like at the 6-foot correct social distancing, but why don't you tell people where you are in the world?
Well, I am at my home in Victoria, BC, where I've been since March 15th when Opera Atelier's resurrection was cut untimely short, and just living my life, walking my dog and playing the piano.
That doesn't sound like such a bad life.
Honestly, it's the best thing.
Yeah, it's interesting as I think about the pandemic. We're in phase 2 here, of course, in British Columbia. So we are sort of re-emerging, but still performances are not okay. We're not allowed to gather. I'm just sort of curious about your own experience with the pandemic in terms of what's been difficult and hard about it, and maybe what's been sort of the gift. Maybe the dog is part of the gift, but what's been hard about it for you?
Well, my difficulties are no different than anyone else's in terms of, lots of canceled gigs, and some things I was really, really looking forward to. I was going to be premiering this new American oratorio at Carnegie Hall on May 6th, and I was going to, of course, be doing my solo show, The Book of My Shames, here with Pacific Opera and Intrepid Theatre. And one of my biggest disappointments, which I told you last week when I saw you, is that I was supposed to be directing a double bill of Dido and Aeneas and James Rolfe's Aeneas and Dido at Opera Nuova, and I've just started directing. It's my 3rd production, and I was really looking forward to it. It was a real highlight of my season, and so that was a real disappointment. So I mean, of course, but every performer has more tragic stories than mine, and many of these things for me have been postponed for whenever we can do it again, as most people are. But in terms of the not so bad things, it's easier for me to talk about in some ways, actually, because they're more present in my life from day to day. Right before I left to go to Opera Atelier, the week before the sort of shutdowns hit, I was sort of complaining to a group of friends about, I wish I just never had to leave the house. and I could just, it's hard to complain about having work. And I was working quite a bit this spring. It was really back to back from sort of January to June. And I was just feeling the fatigue of the travel and all this stuff, and really missing my family and my dog and my husband and our home. And there's so many creative projects that I always want to have time to do, but I always have to do the thing that's coming up next. And so having the opportunity to just take that really pointed direction out of my life, I think that's something that really a lot of people struggle with, but for me, it's been a real gift.
Now, you're pointing to all sorts of things that you're artistically drawn to, which makes you not entirely a unicorn in our business, but certainly one of the rare artists who works as a soloist, but also who creates their own work and who writes. And you have a number of projects on the go. So I'm very curious, what have you been investing your time in creatively during the pandemic, since you are at home and you have a little time and space?
Well, as you may know, on May 10th, I had the idea that for a year, May 10th is my sister's 6th wedding anniversary. So I said, for the 7th year of my sister's marriage, for the entire year, every day, I'm going to post on Instagram an original haiku that I'm going to illustrate. And because I've been writing a lot of haiku, it's been one of the beautiful things about having all this extra time walking my dog and taking these really leisurely walks and meditating a lot is that you notice moments, and a haiku is basically just a moment that sort of occurred through you, or that happened to you, or that you witnessed. And so I had this idea, and originally I was just doing sort of, I would draw the haiku on a piece of glass and sort of hold it up to the sky or whatever. It took 5 minutes. But instantly, because of the kind of person I am, they started becoming increasingly elaborate and started using sort of time-lapse technology and really complicated crafts and stuff like that. As we were discussing last week, I feel like, how dogs are sort of bred a certain way, so you can sort of tell what the dog's meant for by what they like to do. Like border collies do this, and my dog, likes to run in long grass and retrieve things for you and everything. And I feel like I must have been an artisan. My people must be artisans, because I'm never happier than when I'm sort of sitting down, like chatting with some friends, you know, just doing some little fiddly bits with my hands. I mean, I can't knit or whatever, but a lot of crafting and cutting things out and gluing things and building things and stuff like that. Something that doesn't necessarily, it's not the same kind of creativity that we channel as singers. It's a much more sort of tactile creativity. And so I've been doing that, and it's actually been occupying a lot of my time. And it's the great thing about it is I've been wondering if it's how I should be spending my time, because it's so disconnected from my daily life in music. Most of the creative things that I do, as you said, I have many different streams that I'm in, but most of them have to do with the theater and with live performance and music, and this doesn't. But as I've been doing it, I've been delighted to see how much it turns on that creativity that sometimes when there's a bit of a more narrow box, as there has to be when you're working with other people and you're working in an industry and there's specific specifications, when there's not such a narrow box like with the project I'm doing right now, the creativity feeds itself and opens up, and it eventually filters back into the work I do with my performance and with my music.
Well, I'm so glad that I asked you that leading question, because of course I do see them on Instagram and they're amazing. And I can't believe you committed to one every day.
Yes, it is.
Insane.
I figured out that there's 337 left.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll have you say, what is your Instagram handle as such, so that people can go and take a look at it?
Yes, so the handle is, if you're on Instagram, it's my name, ISAIAH, Isaiah, 5 times. Instagram.com/Isaiah. Because Isaiah was taken.
You know, and I just kind of wonder what sort of kid you were, because my son's name is Fletcher, but we always said it was in 3s because you had to call him 3 times to actually get his attention. So I'm concerned that your mother had to yell that 5 times to get you to look, but.
Well, you know, I grew up on a farm, and so, you know, I spent a lot of time in the woods, and I think you had to call more than 5.
And thus an Instagram handle is born. All right, Isaiah, why don't you tell me about the song you've chosen to share with people today on Acoustic Afternoons?
Yes, so this is actually something that I've written for this purpose. The text is this incredible old anonymous medieval fragment of a poem, O Western Wynde. Have you ever heard this? I first came across it in, I think maybe it was in the Waves, Virginia Woolf, or a Virginia Woolf book anyway, but it's this famous poem. It just goes, O western wind, when wilt thou blow, that the small rain down can rain? Christ, that my love were in my arms and I in my bed again. I think it's just this wonderful, beautiful, and it feels to me like a stone that's sort of been like in the river for years. You know, it's this wonderful sort of perfect little thing, and it connects into this haiku, you know, the miniature poem aesthetic, which I find so appealing. But sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, oh, I wish I were in my bed again is often how I feel in stressful times. So it feels very much a pandemic appropriate expression for me.
Well, me too. And for me, actually, so I had been meaning to do something with this musically for a long time. So there was a melody that had been kicking around in my head that I've been sort of, the same idea of sort of polishing it off over the years, kind of. You sing it through your head whenever it comes up. And the reason it came up recently is because Renee, my husband, just was reading this book, this medieval murder mystery called Western Wynde that a friend had I think Samantha Harvey's the author. So the melody was kicking around in my head until eventually I thought, well, why don't I arrange it for this? I think it's kind of, in some ways, even though it's not an intuitive selection for this, because we're specifically, a lot of us, getting a lot more time at home and in bed than maybe we ever bargained for. But when I'm away, I spend so much time longing for home that somehow this does seem like the appropriate response to me, like a gratitude response, realizing that longing is being answered right now, and taking the time to appreciate that. And I think that a lot of us still feel in COVID some sense of that, like, intangible longing for something we can't really articulate. And that's what I think that poem speaks to for me. So I arranged it for a very simple piano part that I can play while I'm singing.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to hearing it and to sharing it with everyone. And I really appreciate you taking some time today to chat with me a bit about where you're at and how things are going for you. And I look forward to the next 337 days on Instagram.
Maybe 336 now.
Thank you so much, Isaiah.
Thank you. Lovely to see you, Rebecca.
O western wind, when wilt thou blow, that the small rain down can rain? Christ, that my love were in my arms, and I in my bed again. O western wind, when